Brad, thanks for joining us. Tell us about your break in the off-season. What's been up for you?
Well, it's not much of a break now in the traditional October period these days. I pretty much worked through to Christmas and then passed over the baton to Daniel G in Syracuse to run the program for the 2 weeks or 2 extra weeks that I took over Christmas. So I think that has some win-wins for everyone. G is more than capable of taking control of his own program now. As I said to the players, they're very quickly going to get sick of the sound of my voice, so a 2-week reprieve is probably good for them as well.
What have been the focuses for the Bombers in your second off-season in charge?
Yeah, a big focus with some additional recruits coming in has been the synergy with our group. I'm always very conscious when you potentially bring in 3, 4, 5 players, including our draftees, who have the capability of being selected in our best side, that's a big turnover in terms of new players into your team with a different system. And in the case with experienced recruits, you're trying to probably undo some things that have been habitual in a different system and relearn. So that takes time. So we've really worked hard on our synergy, which has meant a lot of full ground drills, trying to connect our defence with our midfield and with our forward half.
I know this time last year we sat down and you're only a couple of months into the role at that point and you're getting to know Essendon as a footy club. What didn't you know that you've since found out about Essendon, the wider footy club, and what surprised you in that time as well?
Oh, well, I think what I did know, but nothing really prepares you for it, is just the sheer scale of the love and passion of this football club. And I think every football club in the AFL, particularly the clubs that have got a 150-year storied history like Essendon, have passion. I think that's a given, but it's just the scale of that passion. I think Todd Goldstein came down to one of his first sessions and said, are we playing in a finals series this week? Because it felt like a finals atmosphere with the amount of supporters we had down watching us train, and we love that at the Hangar. We love having our supporters down to watch us train, and so it's not a surprise, I'd say, but it's that I'm always, I think about how fortunate we are to have the support that we do.
You've driven a big philosophy of players having a fair bit of ownership around their own program and success. How have you seen that grow over the last 18 months since you arrived?
Yeah, I think there's a balance to it. I mean, players ultimately have to buy in, but I think coaches, and the head coach in particular, have a huge responsibility to not just throw it over to the players to say, over to you guys go and get it done. We've got to set the framework, we've got to set the program, and ultimately the most important part of my job is to hold the players accountable to the standards and expectations that we set. So it's not simply saying, players, you guys have got to get it done. It's being really clear on what our expectations are and what an elite AFL lifestyle looks like, and then holding them accountable to it. And it's a lot easier if they drive that themselves, but it's not simply, hand over to them and delegate all responsibility over to them. We've got to drive them as well.
You spoke about the on-field recruits. There's been some off-field moves as well. Tell us about the impact of Ben Robbins and David Rath and what brought you to get them to the footy club.
Yeah, well, again, when you take over as a head coach, you're very rarely taking over a program that's going really well. So the temptation can be to make instant change and try and change things. But I took the view that I didn't really know what those changes needed to be. So it needed some time to assess the program and to make sure we retained all the things that were going really well. And there were some things that were going really well here. It's a credit to the football club that potentially externally people thought there was turmoil, but there are always good things happening, and we wanted to retain all of those things. Cognizant that we knew there needed to be some change as well. One of those, big changes was just some more rigour to the analytics part of our program, and to make sure that, for example, when we train, are we training the things we think we're training, and are we getting good cut through and transfer from training through to games? And David Rath brings a wealth of experience in that space. Just unbelievable experience from the RAS to, Hawthorn's era of success, to multiple sports. And he gives me someone in particular to be able to talk to about the nuance of our game and innovation.
We've seen him out there as well doing a fair bit of kicking work with players. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's ultimately, way back when I met him in the early 2000s, he was a biomechanist at the Australian Institute of Sport with a special interest in the mechanics and improving kicking technique. And again, we do a lot of training and we drill a lot of things technically and tactically. But I really felt that we needed some more expertise in the kicking mechanics. So he drives our kicking program, and the players have noticed a significant improvement in their execution, and that's a big part. Kicking program, not only goal kicking, just general field kicking as well.
How much have you reflected on how 2023 ended as a team?
Yeah, quite a bit. I probably statistically think you learn a lot more from your losses than you do your wins. Your wins tend to reinforce what you're doing well, but I think we had some good patches throughout the year, and then we had a really poor finish, and I think both tell a story. So yeah, we've reflected on a lot, and ultimately, last two games we played two very good teams. One being the Premier, and another team that was 1 point away from potentially being premiers themselves. So that just told a story as to the gap. We weren't at our best, they were at their best, and there's a significant gap in between.
What do you think Essendon supporters should expect from their team in 2024 then?
Continued improvement, both on an individual level, but also as a team. I think most clubs going into 24 can expect their best to be pretty good. That's certainly the way I look at it. I can make a case for every team when they're at their best with their best personnel available, that they'll be a handful. The challenge for us is that when we don't have our full list available, or we're a bit off our best, there can't be big gaps between our very best footy and our worst footy, and that it's a long. We talk about it all the time. It's a long season. There's 125 minutes of a brutal footy per week to be played. So there are a lot of players who can do it in patches, but not over a long period of time. But I'm sure that's pretty common across every club.
Do you think the group's capable of getting into that finals area and making a difference there? Because I'm sure Essendon supporters grab you on the street every so often, talk about the 20-year drought and the weight that brings. Yeah, and we're well aware of the history. I think it's not. You'd be crazy to stick your head in the sand and pretend it's not there. One of the things I love about being involved at Essendon is just the massive support and the passion of the footy club. But with that comes, a fair amount of expectation as well, which we absolutely want to embrace. And I think our supporters should have reason to be optimistic about the future. But as professional athletes and coaches, we just, as boring as it sounds, we focus on continual improvement day by day. And if we do that really well, then the results will be the sum of all that work that goes into it. But again, you can be prepared for the hype. You can be prepared, for when the competition narrows from 18 teams to 8. The pressure that comes with that. You can hope you'll be okay, or you can be prepared for it. And we're working really hard mentally and physically to be prepared for that if we earn the right to qualify. We spoke this time last year and you were just coming back into the system as an AFL coach after 3.5 years out, obviously still in the game heavily, but throughout last year, did you find yourself interested in the involvement and evolvement of the role of the senior coach in that time? Had much change, do you feel, when you come back to the nuts and bolts of it all?
I think it's a really difficult period to compare, because you would think that 4 or 5 years on that the game would have evolved, but the AFL footy, like the rest of the world, has been through a once in 100 year epidemic where you're dealing with a completely different environment, an environment that was stripped back to bare bones, slowly being rebuilt. So potentially that worked a little bit to my advantage, because football clubs, if anything, were or they still are, they were better resourced in 2018 than they are in 2023. So, in terms of the football department, probably hadn't changed, a great deal. but I suspect it'll really ramp up and build from there. So no, the role and the week to week hasn't changed much.
Let's talk about some players. Sam Draper, will he be in the side for round one? Is he going to be fit by then?
Yeah, well, he just keeps surprising us. If you'd asked me, pre-Christmas, mid-December, I would have said no, just purely based on the program we had built out for him and where he was at that point. But he with every session, he not only ticks the box in terms of his progression, but he's ahead of where we thought he'd be. That being said, I think we learned our lesson last year. He started to get sore. He kept playing, and in perfect hindsight, we would have pulled him back earlier. But that's very difficult to do when he was sore, but he wasn't sore enough not to play. But then we lost him for the back half of the year. So we've got to be, our goal and my clear direction to our high performance and medical team is that we want him robust enough to get through a whole season at his best, not just manage him through a season. We want him at his best. So that dictates a cautious approach. So whether it's round one, I wouldn't put it past him the way he's going, but I can't guarantee it either.
Probably your best footy last year was played when you had two rucks playing with Andrew Phillips partnering with Sam Draper. Do you still plan to use two this year for a lot of it? Is that in your mind?
Yeah, I'm just really open to it. One thing we knew we needed was more ruck support. Andrew Phillips retiring at the peak of his powers is pretty rare. But that two rucks certainly worked for us, but probably also coincided with Peter Wright not being available at the same time. So, I think one of the things we've been able to do through the off season is build in some flexibility to our team that we can go 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways, and still look reasonably potent. So, whether that's one ruck, two rucks, if you count Peter Wright, 3 rucks, that we want to have that flexibility and be able to pick a team that we think is going to give us the best chance on any given weekend.
Pretty fit across the squad, touch wood at the moment. A couple of setbacks obviously in recent weeks, but otherwise pretty strong. How much benefit has that been across the summer as well to have a group, probably unlike last year a little bit, in terms of being able to get through your drills and get some real time into them?
Yeah, I think there are a whole lot of measures in pre-season, and we're very microscopic in terms of analysing every last little detail, and whether it be statistically, GPS, whatever it is. But really the most important measure of pre-season, if you take as a baseline that everyone trains really hard and everyone works on their game, probably the most important measure is availability. And we've been able to do a fair bit of 18 v 18 with a full complement of AFL players, and that's given us a bit of flexibility to play players in slightly different roles, and not only their primary role but also some secondary and tertiary roles as well. So. That's pleasing, but as soon as you say we've got good availability, you get news like Kane Baldwin with his stress fracture. So, but generally, if you start the season with a long injury list, it's very hard to arrest that, because for every player you get back, you tend to lose one. How many do you expect to roll through the couple of practice games? I'd say in really rough terms, 30 odd. I think, and that's at AFL level. We'll certainly have an AFL and a VFL hit out this Friday against St Kilda. So everyone will get game time, and we'll expose probably 3/4 of our list to some very good AFL players that St Kilda roll out. Been to a few sessions over summer, and Nick Martin looks pretty comfortable across half back. Tell us about the decision to give him a chance there and train him up in that position as well. Yeah, again, it just comes down to primary, secondary roles. I think back to Anzac Day, and a lot of people have asked me, what happened 3/4 time Anzac Day? We put ourselves in a winnable position. I think 29 points up. But Jaden Laverty had been crunched. He was off the ground. I was told he couldn't come back on. And we were limited with players that we could move to half back, and so we had to put a player at half back who really hadn't trained there and wasn't prepared to play there. So we've been pretty diligent in making sure that we've got a lot of bases covered, and that means making sure the players are prepared to play those roles. So whether that's Nick playing half back, Nick Hine playing forward and back, our rucks spending a fair bit of time forward so that they can go and play there if we choose to play 2 rucks. But Nick Martin, he'd look comfortable no matter where he was on the ground. He's just a really smart player and a terrific ball user.
Nick Dacos also happened in that last quarter too, in that Anzac Day game. Is there a bit of familiarity with the role that he played as well that Martin could potentially do?
Yeah, I think it's a really... The game always evolves, and sometimes it evolves full circle and it comes back to where it was. And, I even think back to, as an example, the Sydney Swans side of Malcheski, Ty Kennelly, Reece Shaw running off half back. Those players were really important back in that era, and I think they're equally as important in the modern era. We've got some, Redmond, McGrath, Nick Hind. We've got a lot of players who can do that. But again, 1 or 2 injuries, a couple of positional shifts. We want to make sure we've got enough depth to be able to do that, and Marto's certainly capable of it.
What does the depth on that front as well with your wingman now give you the opportunity to have a play around there too, given Dersma comes in, Elijah Sardes has had a full pre-season? Yeah,
it's always a fascinating discussion as to how you value certain players, and I think Xavier Dersma's got terrific attributes, and for us we probably felt we were a little bit short at different stages with some outside run. So, we value Xavier really highly, and he's had a terrific last month, and it's been a whirlwind for him. He's come into a new system, playing with new players, but it's a role that enables us to play some players in different positions, whether that be Sam Durham or Jake Kelly or Nick Hind, or a whole lot of different guys can roll through there. So, and that probably speaks to the other recruits as well, that it enables us to be a bit more flexible.
How has Elijah Sardes' second pre-season at the footy club been? Obviously injury interrupted last year. About this time, went down with that knee injury that ruled him out for 3 or 4 months. Second time around?
Yeah, it's amazing. You've got to constantly remind yourself that we draft these. They are boys. They're turning 18 in their draft year, and they come in their first year in their lives as an adult. They're playing AFL football in an AFL environment. You've got to remind yourself how quickly their body shape can change. And Elijah's always had a lot of raw power, but he's had raw power for a 17, 18-year-old, and he's really developed, physically, and he's starting to display those attributes, those elite attributes that we saw as a junior. He's now transferring that through to the training track, and that comes with a bit of maturity, but a bit of size and strength as well. So he's still got a long way to go, and he's going well. He's performing at a high level, but the scope for his improvement is significant.
You've got a few guys jostling for the same midfield spots. We speak about the obvious guys in Darcy Parish and Zach Merritt who have them locked in, you'd imagine, unless you've got some surprises up your sleeves there. But, Jai Caldwell, Archie Perkins, Sam Durham, Ben Hobbs, have you worked out exactly all fit and competing where it looks and how it sits?
No, I haven't, but I know that it's going to take all of them. Whether that's, again, primary roles, secondary roles. But I think Zach has elevated himself into, an elite player in the competition. I think he's a 4-time Crichton medalist. He's, I think by most, just about any definition, he's an elite player. I certainly hold him in that regard. Darcy's been All-Australian, terrific player. And then throw a blanket over everyone else. I mean, it's a good thing for us that we've got good depth through there, but we've really pushed those individuals that you mentioned to elevate their game to the next level. So it's really healthy competition, but we need a couple of them to jump up and really stamp their authority on the team, and by extension the competition.
What did you say to Ben Mackay last year that you think got him over the line to come to the Bombers? He had a lot of competition for him. Key back, you needed one. Yeah. What was the sell?
Ultimately, it's the same as retaining players. It's selling the vision, which for obvious reasons is an internal discussion, but selling the vision of the club, clearly articulating the program that we've outlined, and I think one of the biggest sells, to someone like Ben Mackay in the prime of his career, is that we have a program and a coaching structure that we believe can make him the best player he can possibly be. So it's a combination of selling the vision for the club, and Ben's going to play his prime years with us. So with that, he's got to be sold on the fact that at least we're capable of some team success. And also it helped that I knew Ben. I was there when he was first drafted. But he also watched some players, probably at the twilight of their career. Jared Waite, Sean Higgins, Nick D'Alsano, etc. Arguably become better players, and that's what we as a coaching staff pride ourselves on. And if we can sell him the vision and make him the best player he can be, we hope we could present a compelling case, which obviously he bought into.
And he's been pretty well all right through the pre-season. Obviously came with a bit of a knee niggle.
Yeah, it was a challenge early. He was in an awkward position really as a free agent. Didn't have a club for a period of time. Both the club he was currently at, and then us, we both had a disappointing September, given we weren't there. So we couldn't take over that process, and the club he was leaving couldn't take over it either. So he had this period of limbo where he was almost operating independently without any support. So as soon as we could make things official, we drilled down on that, put a program in place, modified him up until Christmas, and he hasn't missed a beat post.
So he'll be a new face. Zach Reed will feel like one. How excited are you by? I know we've spoken about him a couple of times when you've been on afl.com.au. Now at 205 centimetres, he looks really fit and healthy and happy too, which has been a tough road for him. How excited are you by defence now? You've got a couple of those guys that can match up on the taller types at opposition teams.
Yeah, it certainly helps, and it's not only what the roles that Ben and Reedy and others can play for us. It's the roles they allow others to play, and I think that's we're bitterly disappointed. Someone like Kane Baldwin, who's had a fantastic pre-season, just an absolute pro. And it's just another reminder that bad things happen to good people all the time, and you can get everything right in your preparation and still have that devastating news. Jaden Hunter's another one that comes to mind that it's just for a young kid who's had traumatic setbacks with 2 ACLs, back stress fracture, as diligent as a 30-year-old veteran professional, they get injured. So that's again a reminder that while Ben and Zach are important to us, it's not going to be up to those two. We're going to need others at different stages as well. But it's a credit to Reedy. He's worked extremely hard. We're excited, but we're not lumping him with the expectation of holding up our last line of defence. He'll certainly get opportunity. He's in good physical and mental shape, but he's played 8 games. He's played 8 games in 4 years, so we've got to temper our excitement.
Do we have to temper our excitement about Nate Caddy too? Do you think he's a chance early in the season?
It's going to be difficult to... And look, I think our supporters should get excited. He's a rare player in that, and you've watched him really closely through his junior career. He just strikes me as a player who, the bigger occasion, the bigger the moment, the more he thrives on it. And they're the players you're looking for at AFL level, because it's a brutal environment and it's tough. And as a key forward, you only get moments. You very rarely get perfect lace-out supply all game. So you've got to take advantage of the opportunities that you get. And he's just an X-factor player that he works really hard. He's got fantastic athleticism, attributes, both in the air and on the ground. And he makes something out of nothing. And so, while probably internally we have to temper expectations with him, this is a cliche at the moment, everyone says it, but there's just no limit on what he can do. And we're not going to hold him back for the sake of holding him back. We've been cautious with his physical preparation, as you need to be with young talls. But at training, he just continues to do things and exceed our expectations in what he can do. So now what he's capable of in 2024, who knows? But we won't be holding him back just for the sake of it. We'll manage him correctly with his physical prep. But he's getting off experienced 100-game defenders with ease, and those defenders aren't letting him off the hook. He's just making it happen. So sky's the limit for Nate.
Last year was Zach's first as captain. Do you change the leadership structure in terms of the leadership group, or a wider leadership group potentially this year?
We've definitely expanded our leadership capability. As to how that translates into a formal leadership structure, we're on the verge of announcing that. But suffice to say, we're extremely happy with Zach's development as a standalone captain. Andy McGrath is just, he's just a pro in every respect, and together they form a very, very good combination. And what probably doesn't get seen from the outside is just the depth of leadership. We've had a lot of guys really grow and develop in that space, and some of them have been thorough professionals, but they've been focused very much on what they can do, what they've been giving to the team, whether that be Darcy Parish, Cole Langford, Peter Wright, Mason Redmond. I mean, there's a long list there that this time last year I wasn't sure whether we had that or not.
Before we let you go, a couple to finish up. Obviously really busy last trade period and draft as well. Are you closer to feeling like you're nearly there in terms of the list at your disposal? Do you think that's going to be another aggressive season from you guys on that front as well?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but we're planning. I mean, like every club. I mean, if you're not planning that now, you're behind. So, we have a really simple philosophy, and it's not rocket science. But we're just always looking to improve our list, any way we can within the parameters that we're in a very tight structure in terms of salary caps and drafts and those sort of things. But we think we've got some capability on our list that can really progress in terms of elevating their game. But we're also aware that we need some more top end capability, whether that be at the pointy end of the draft or through free agent trade acquisitions.
And how should mid-season trading work? It feels like the AFL wants it for next year.
Yeah, I'll probably take a step back. I think there are a couple of steps that we need to address before that. The fluidity of player movement, I think, needs to open up a little bit. We quite often have players announce in contract they're leaving clubs and declaring the club they're going to. And also players out of contract doing that. So they're not free agents, but they're acting like free agents. Whereas clubs don't have that flexibility. Quite often two clubs will come to an agreement on a player, but the player will block that trade. So I think until we start to address that, and maybe I'm a bit. I like the evolution of the game, but I still struggle a little bit with just the cultural aspect of losing a player who's bought into your system, your culture, and then playing for someone else in the same season.
Brad, thanks for joining us on afl.com.au on the Essendon website.